The Atlantic wind bit hard against the jagged coastline, carrying salt spray that stung cheeks and blurred the horizon. Gray waves crashed endlessly against black basalt cliffs, foaming and roaring beneath the tall stone lighthouse that stood sentinel over the bay. It was the winter of 1897. Fog rolled in most evenings, swallowing ships whole, and only the steady beam from the lighthouse cut through the endless murk. Elias Voss was its keeper. He was 28, quiet and weather-worn. Years of tending the lamp through gales had etched faint lines around his eyes. Most days passed in solitude. He polished the great glass lens, trimmed the wick, hauled coal up the winding stone stairs, and watched the sea stretch out into nothing. The small cottage attached to the tower held little more than worn books, a chipped teacup, and a wooden chair by the window. Townsfolk rarely ventured out this far. They said the headland belonged only to gulls, storm winds, and ghosts of sailors lost at sea. Elias had grown used to loneliness. He thought his life would always be this way, predictable, still, untouched by passion. That belief shattered on a storm-tossed October afternoon. A violent tempest burst out of nowhere. Black clouds piled high, rain lashed horizontally, and waves swelled into towering walls. From the lighthouse gallery, Elias spotted something strange among the white-capped surf. A small sailing boat, broken and dismasted, being hurled toward the rocks. He lit signal flares, shouted into the gale, but there was no reply. By dusk, the storm eased. Down on the shore, tangled among driftwood and shattered planks, lay a woman. Her dark hair clung to her face, her wool dress soaked and torn. She was unconscious, pulse faint beneath cold skin. Elias carried her up the steep cliff path to his cottage, wrapped her in thick wool blankets, and set a fire crackling in the hearth. When she woke near midnight, her eyes were deep amber, sharp and unafraid, despite all she had endured. Her name was Elowen Moreau. She told him she had fled from a city far to the south. Betrothed against her will to a wealthy merchant twice her age, she had stolen a small vessel in the dead of night, determined to chase freedom rather than a gilded cage. She had dreamed of distant shores, of living by her own choices. Yet the ocean had nearly taken her life instead. Her ship was splintered beyond repair. There was nowhere for her to return. Elias offered her shelter for as long as she needed. Days stretched into weeks. The fog lifted, giving way to crisp, bright autumn. Elowen slowly recovered. She helped him tend the lighthouse, carrying oil cans, mending torn sails from wreckage, gathering wild blackberries along the cliff paths. She would sit by the kitchen fire and read poetry aloud, her soft voice weaving through the silence that Elias had once cherished. He had never met anyone like her. She laughed at the howling wind instead of fearing it. She questioned everything, spoke of art and rebellion and what it meant to truly belong to oneself. Bit by bit, the heavy quiet of the lighthouse melted away. Love grew between them gently, not in fiery, reckless bursts, but in small, unguarded moments. In the early dawn, before he climbed the tower, Elowen would place a warm mug in his hands. On clear nights when the lamp burned bright, they would lean against the stone parapet shoulder to shoulder, watching moonlight spill silver across the endless ocean. Elias, who had spent years closed off from the world, found himself longing for her presence. When her hand brushed his heart raced. He had never imagined he could care for another human being so deeply. Yet shadow hung over their fragile happiness. Messengers from the city eventually tracked Elowen to the remote headland. Word arrived one gray morning. Her betrothed had sent men to bring her back. They would arrive by boat within 3 days. If she was caught, she would be forced into the arranged marriage. There would be no escape. That evening, the sky turned deep indigo. Elias and Eloin walked along the cliff as waves boomed far below. The weight of what was coming pressed heavy upon both of them. "I could run with you," Elias said quietly. "We could board a trading ship, vanish across the sea, start somewhere new." Eloin gazed out toward the horizon, her expression sorrowful yet steady. "I want nothing more than to stay here with you," she whispered. "But if I flee again, they will hunt us endlessly. They have wealth and influence. They will not stop chasing us. We would spend every day running, always looking over our shoulders, never truly free." Tears glistened in her amber eyes. "I did not run away just to spend my life in fear. I dreamed of freedom, not constant flight." They returned to the lighthouse. That night, the lamp turned slow, casting sweeping golden arcs over dark water. Inside the cottage, they spent their last hours together. They spoke of all the quiet futures they would never get to live. Spring mornings picking wild roses, old age sitting side by the fire, simple, ordinary joys. They held each other, knowing separation drew near. Neither slept. When dawn broke, sails appeared on the horizon. The men had come. Eloin made her choice. She would go back to the city, not out of surrender, but to reclaim her own fate from within the world that sought to chain her. She would fight with words rather than flight, to break the engagement on her own terms. "I will fight for myself," she told Elias. "If I succeed, I will return. I will sail back to this bay. Watch for me. When you see a single red rose tied to the bow of a ship, that will be me coming home." They kissed goodbye on the rocky shore. Her figure climbed aboard the vessel, and the ship pulled away, shrinking slowly until it dissolved into the haze. The lighthouse fell back into silence, yet it was no longer the peaceful solitude Elias had once known. Every day he climbed to the gallery. He scanned every incoming sail, searching for that small flash of red. Months passed. Winter came once more. Gales shook the stone walls. He kept a dried wild rose she had given him pressed between the pages of his poetry book. Townsfolk said the outsider woman was long gone, that she would never return. Some whispered she had married the merchant after all. Doubt gnawed at Elias in the long, lonely nights. Still, he refused to give up hope. Spring arrived. The cliffs bloomed with wild flowers. One soft sunset, when the ocean lay smooth as hammered silver, a ship rounded the headland. Elias raised his spyglass. Tied to its bow, bright against the pale wood, bloomed a vivid red rose. The anchor dropped. A small boat rowed toward shore. Eloin stepped onto the beach. She had won. She had argued her case before lawyers, broken the betrothal, and earned her freedom. She had crossed hundreds of miles of ocean just to come back to the lighthouse and to him. She ran across the sand. Elias hurried down the cliff path to meet her. When they embraced, the salt wind swirled around them. All the cold loneliness of the past months melted away. They did not leave the headland. Eloin stayed. Some evenings they climbed the winding stairs together to tend the lamp. The great lens turned, casting its golden beam far out across the Atlantic, guiding travelers home. For them, home was not a grand city or a palace. It was this rugged coast, the stone tower, and the quiet, unshakable love they had found within its walls. The sea still raged in storm and fog still rolled in to veil the world. But no longer did Elias stand watch alone.